For 20 years, her hands only sorted books and held her grandsons. But when the first shot echoed through the mall, a 60-year-old grandmother remembered the weight of a rifle better than her own name. The scent of cinnamon and sugar from a Cinnabon stand hung thick in the air of the Oak Creek Galleria, a sweet, warm blanket over the typical Tuesday afternoon chaos. Eleanor Vance, 60 years old and moving with the deliberate grace of someone who respected her own arthritic knees, navigated the river of shoppers. Her silver-white hair was tied in a neat bun, and the laugh lines around her blue eyes deepened as she watched a toddler chase a stray balloon. To anyone who glanced her way, she was the epitome of a gentle grandmother, a retired librarian who now measured her days in cups of chamomile tea and chapters of mystery novels. Her mission today was singular and joyous: secure the perfect 10th birthday present for her grandson, Leo. He was obsessed with space, a passion Eleanor nurtured with every documentary and book she could find. The prize was a limited edition Lego Stellar Explorer set, a monstrous box of plastic bricks that promised to build a ship capable of traversing imaginary galaxies. Before heading to the toy store, she stopped at a small cafe near the central fountain. As she ordered a decaf latte, her eyes, almost without permission, scanned the layout. She chose a small table in the corner, one that offered a clear view of the two main entrances and the escalator, her back comfortably against a solid wall. She chuckled to herself, attributing the old habit to a lifetime spent in libraries, always needing to know where the emergency exits were. An old woman's silly fixation, she thought, stirring her coffee. From her vantage point, she observed teenagers glued to their phones, oblivious. A young mother struggling with a stroller and two energetic kids. Businessmen in ill-fitting suits talking too loudly. A familiar sense of detached melancholy washed over her. They were all so blissfully unaware, cocooned in a fragile peace they took for granted. She'd once lived in a world where such blissful ignorance was a luxury no one could afford. She pushed the thought away, a familiar and unwelcome ghost. It had no place here, not next to the cheerful splash of the fountain and the thought of Leo's face when he saw the Lego set. She finished her latte, the warmth a small comfort against the phantom chill of memory, and stood up, ready to complete her mission. The toy store was on the second floor, a bright beacon of childhood joy she was eager to reach. Eleanor rode the escalator, its gentle hum a stark contrast to the noise that sometimes echoed in the quietest corners of her mind. The second floor of the Galleria was brighter, louder. As she passed the flashing, cacophonous entrance to the video arcade, a specific sound cut through the din, the digitized rat-tat-tat of a simulated machine gun. For a fraction of a second, the fluorescent lights of the mall dissolved. The air, thick and humid, tasted of rain and mud. It was 1989, Panama. She wasn't Eleanor Vance, librarian. She was Ghost, a 24-year-old U.S. Army specialist, attached to a Special Forces team. They were pinned down, a critical intel asset trapped with them in a crumbling stucco building. Rain hammered down in blinding sheets, turning the world into a gray, roaring blur. Her target, an enemy commander coordinating the attack, was in a building across the street, visible only through a narrow, shattered window slit less than a foot wide. Her heart wasn't pounding, it was a slow, metronomic drum. One beat in, hold. One beat out, release. The mantra was a physical thing, a shield against the chaos. The world shrank to the circle of her scope. Raindrops streaked across the lens, distorting the image. She adjusted, her breathing steady, her body a statue of coiled stillness. The target appeared for a second, shouting orders. It was enough. The calculation was instant, unconscious: distance, wind, humidity, the angle of the rain. She didn't pull the trigger, she allowed it to happen, a seamless extension of her will. The rifle bucked against her shoulder, a familiar, violent kiss. The figure in the scope vanished. The enemy radio went silent. The pressure on her team evaporated. They got out. Eleanor. Ma'am. A young store employee was looking at her, concern on his face. She was standing frozen in front of the toy store. The sounds of the arcade were just sounds again. Her hand, she realized, was clenched into a tight fist at her side, nails digging into her palm. "Oh, I'm sorry, dear," she said, her voice a little shaky as she forced a grandmotherly smile. "Just lost in thought." She entered the store, the bright colors and cheerful music a jarring juxtaposition to the jungle in her head. She had buried Ghost 3 decades ago, burying her under a mountain of books, a quiet marriage, and the unconditional love of her children and grandchildren. She had built Eleanor Vance brick by brick, a fortress of normalcy to keep the ghost contained. But sometimes, a sound, a smell, a trick of the light, was all it took for the ghost to rattle the bars of her cage, a chilling reminder that the person you once were never truly leaves. Marcus Torres, 23, felt a surge of divine power as he stepped out of the second-floor men's restroom. The AR-15 felt cool and solid in his hands, a stark contrast to the sweaty tremor of his grip. He'd assembled it in the stall, the clicks of the magazine seeding into the receiver sounding like the keys to his destiny. Online, in the dark forums where his anger was nurtured and validated, they called him a crusader. He was here to collect a debt from a world that had ignored him, wronged him, and deemed him insignificant. The Oak Creek Galleria on a Tuesday was his chosen temple of judgment. Security was light, the layout was familiar, and the soft, unsuspecting targets were plentiful. He felt no nerves, only a profound and terrifying sense of purpose. He pulled the black hoodie over his head, the fabric a final veil between the failure he was and the monster he was about to become. Eleanor had just paid for the massive Lego set. The cashier, a girl no older than her own granddaughter, had commented on how lucky Leo was. "He's my whole world," Eleanor had replied, and meant it with every fiber of her being. She was walking towards the down escalator, the heavy box tucked under one arm, when the first shot tore through the fabric of the afternoon. It wasn't a pop. It was a crack, a visceral, physical concussion that vibrated through the tiled floor and rattled the glass storefronts. It was a sound that ripped the civilized veneer off the world. It was the sound of a high-velocity rifle, indoors. For one eternal second, the mall held its breath. Shoppers froze, heads turning with bovine incomprehension. A collective, questioning silence. Then came the second and third shots, followed by screams. Primal, ragged screams. Chaos erupted. The river of shoppers became a stampede of panicked bodies. But Eleanor didn't run. She didn't scream. She dropped the Lego box, her mission, her grandson, her world, and it hit the floor with a hollow thud. The 60-year-old grandmother vanished. The arthritic knees, the gentle smile, the librarian's quiet demeanor, all burned away like fog in a desert sun. Her body, which had felt stiff moments before, now moved with a fluid, predatory economy. Her eyes, once soft and blue, became chips of ice, sweeping the scene, processing information with terrifying speed. The ghost was awake. And she was hunting. 0 to 10 seconds, assess. Eleanor didn't hide. She moved. 2 swift steps put her behind a large, circular concrete planter, its decorative palm tree offering minimal concealment but solid cover. Her mind was a supercomputer, processing tactical data. Shooter, second level, near the food court overlook. Weapon, AR-15 platform, semi-automatic fire. Rhythm, erratic, undisciplined. An amateur. He was firing down into the first-floor atrium, his attention fixated on the scattering herd below. He wasn't watching his flanks. Then she saw them. Across the polished floor, not 40 yards away, cowering behind a glass-paneled kiosk that offered no real protection. Her granddaughter, 16-year-old Maya, and her friend. Maya was frozen, her face a mask of pure terror, staring directly at the gunman. The world narrowed to a single, horrifying point. This was no longer a tactical problem. It was personal. 11 to 30 seconds, improvise. Eleanor's gaze swept her immediate surroundings, searching for an advantage, a weapon. Not a gun. Anything. Her eyes locked onto it. 10 feet away, abandoned by a fleeing janitor, was a heavy-duty commercial floor polisher. A big, cylindrical machine of steel and industrial-grade plastic, weighing at least 150 pounds, with a long, sturdy handle. It was clumsy. It was heavy. It was perfect. Her mind didn't just see a cleaning machine, it saw physics. Mass, velocity, momentum, impact vector. She could see the path it would take, the arc it would travel across the slick tile. She could feel the timing in her bones, a deadly calculation of speed and interception. The shooter was fumbling with a magazine change, his head down, his focus broken. The window of opportunity was now. 31 to 45 seconds, execute. She exploded from behind the planter. It wasn't the run of an old woman, it was a controlled, powerful burst of motion, driving low and hard. She grabbed the polisher's handle, her knuckles white. She didn't just push it. She put her entire body weight, her hips and shoulders, into a single, explosive shove. It was the same biomechanical principle she'd used to stabilize a rifle against a desert wind, now applied to a different tool of violence. The heavy machine shot forward, its rubber wheels gliding almost silently across the floor. It picked up speed, a runaway locomotive aimed at a single point. Marcus Torres looked up from his reload, his eyes widening in confusion for a split second as he registered the bizarre, hurtling object. It was the last thing he saw clearly. The polisher slammed into him centermass, the impact a sickening crunch of metal against bone and flesh. The force lifted him off his feet, driving him backward into the steel railing of the overlook. The rifle flew from his grasp, skittering across the floor, well out of reach. 46 to 50 seconds, neutralize. Eleanor was on him before his body even settled. The ghost moved without thought, a symphony of controlled violence honed over decades. As Marcus gasped for air, trying to push himself up, her left hand grabbed the collar of his hoodie. Her right elbow struck a precise, debilitating blow to the cluster of nerves on the side of his neck. His body went limp. She spun him, using his own momentum against him, and drove him face-first onto the hard tile. In one fluid motion, she twisted his left arm behind his back, forcing it up to an impossible angle. Her knee drove hard into his shoulder blade, pinning him to the floor with agonizing pressure. He was completely, utterly immobilized. She leaned down, her voice not a shout, but a cold, quiet whisper that cut through his pain-filled haze. "Don't move," she breathed, her breath hot against his ear. "You twitch, your shoulder breaks. I promise." Total time elapsed, 50 seconds. The mall fell into a stunned, whimpering silence, punctuated only by the distant wail of approaching sirens. The aftermath was a tableau of surreal stillness. Shattered glass glittered like malevolent confetti under the mall's two bright lights. The air was thick with the acrid smell of gunpowder and fear. Eleanor held her position, the pressure of her knee a constant, unwavering anchor on the subdued gunman. Her tactical mind was still working, scanning the area for a second shooter, an accomplice. Never assume a lone wolf. But then a voice cut through her combat focus, a voice that belonged to her other life. "Grandma." Eleanor's head snapped up. There, 30 feet away, her face pale and streaked with tears, stood Maya. Her granddaughter wasn't looking at the neutralized threat on the floor. She was staring at Eleanor. She was staring at the cold efficiency, the coiled power, the stranger who wore her grandmother's face. In Maya's eyes, Eleanor saw not relief, but a profound and terrifying confusion. The loving, gentle woman who baked cookies and helped with homework was kneeling on a man's back with the practiced ease of a predator. The two images could not coexist, and the cognitive dissonance was shattering Maya's world. The police arrived first, followed by SWAT teams who swarmed the area with professional, organized force. When Detective Isabella Rossi, a sharp, no-nonsense woman in her late 30s, approached, she found Eleanor calmly directing a bystander on how to apply pressure to a victim's wound. "Ma'am, I need you to step away," Rossi said, her hand near her sidearm. Eleanor slowly released her hold, rising to her feet with a slight wince that seemed utterly incongruous with the scene. "He's secured. Weapon is over there. He's all yours, detective." Later, in the stark, white mall security office, the questions began. Detective Rossi was sharp. She'd seen the security footage, a raw, unedited feed. She'd seen the calculated movement, the improvised weapon, the flawless takedown. This was not a lucky citizen. "That was not panic, Mrs. Vance," Rossi stated, leaning forward. "That was a textbook tactical neutralization. Where did you learn to do that?" Eleanor hesitated, the walls she'd built over 30 years beginning to crumble. She looked through the office window at Maya, who was wrapped in a blanket, giving her own statement. Her granddaughter kept glancing over, her expression unreadable. "A long time ago," Eleanor said quietly. "I was in the army." Rossi's eyes narrowed. "What was your MOS?" The old military acronym felt alien on her tongue. There was no hiding it now. Not from the police, and certainly not from Maya. The ghost had been seen. 11 Bravo, with a special qualification identifier, she said, her voice flat. "I was a designated marksman. Scout sniper." Detective Rossi's professional demeanor cracked for a second. A woman of Eleanor's generation? In that role? It was almost unheard of. You had a clear opportunity to use lethal force. The rifle was right there. Why didn't you? Eleanor's gaze returned to her granddaughter. She thought of the life she had painstakingly built, the peace she had cultivated. "Because I spent the second half of my life learning how to build, not destroy," she said, her voice thick with an emotion she hadn't felt in decades. "I refuse to become the ghost again in front of my granddaughter." The story exploded. The security footage, blurred but unmistakable, went viral. News outlets dubbed her the Grandma Guardian, the Lioness of Oak Creek. She was a national sensation, a living embodiment of the idea that heroes are hidden all around us. For Eleanor, the media storm was a disorienting whirlwind, but the true challenge was navigating the quiet, uncertain space within her own family. The conversation with Maya happened a few days later, in the familiar comfort of their backyard. The air was filled with the scent of freshly cut grass, a world away from the mall's sterile fear. "I wasn't scared of you, Grandma," Maya said finally, breaking a long silence. Her voice was soft. "I was just meeting all of you. For the first time." She looked at Eleanor, her eyes full of a new, mature understanding. "I'm proud of you. Both of you." In that moment, the fracture between Eleanor Vance and the ghost began to heal. The fame was something Eleanor never wanted, but she refused to let it be meaningless. She began consulting with the local police department, her unique experience providing invaluable insight into active shooter response protocols. But she went further. With the help of a pro bono lawyer and an outpouring of public donations, she established the Ghost Project, a non-profit foundation dedicated to providing mental health support and community reintegration services for female combat veterans, especially those from eras when their service was often overlooked and unacknowledged. The ghost, once a symbol of silent destruction, was being repurposed into an instrument of healing. Marcus Torres was sentenced to life in prison without parole. During the trial, experts testified that Eleanor's 50-second intervention prevented what would have been one of the deadliest mass shootings in the state's history. Months later, on a quiet Saturday afternoon, Eleanor watched as Leo finally completed the Stellar Explorer Lego set. He placed the finished spaceship on the mantelpiece in the living room. Next to it, he carefully stood up a small, framed photograph he'd found in an old box. It was a picture of a 24-year-old Eleanor in desert fatigues, her face young and hard, a faint, determined smile on her lips. The two objects, the symbol of a child's innocent future and the relic of a warrior's violent past, sat side by side, finally at peace. "The world is full of people like Eleanor," quiet legends living ordinary lives, their pasts packed away like old uniforms. Who are the hidden heroes in your neighborhood? Share their stories, or your thoughts on this one, in the comments below. Please, always comment with respect for everyone involved. If this story moved you, help us keep these legacies alive. Subscribe to our channel and share this video, so these hidden legends never have to stay hidden again.